You know, when you think about modern horror entertainment today, um, it usually feels a lot like being strapped into a roller coaster in the absolute pitch dark.
Oh, entirely. It's just a sensory assault.
Right. It's incredibly loud. There are sudden strobe lights, these aggressive audio distortions, and things are jumping out at you that are quite literally engineered just to force a biological spike in your heart rate.
Yeah, it relies almost entirely on cortisol. Like, modern audiences have been conditioned to expect this massive sensory overload.
We're basically paying to be startled,
Hmm.
which is a very different physiological experience than actually being frightened.
Exactly. Startled is a reflex, but actual dread takes time to build.
But so, what if the most terrifying thing isn't a highly produced jump scare? What if the thing that really keeps you awake at night is just a quiet, soothing voice in a dark room reading a 100-year-old letter?
Which is such a contrast. That's the ultimate anomaly in today's audio landscape, really. And surprisingly, it is highly effective at bypassing all of our modern defenses.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. For you listening right now, we are on a mission today to explore the absolute ultimate audio haven for classic supernatural fiction.
It's a really fascinating space to dig into.
It is. And I want to clarify something right off the bat, actually. Because when you sent over your notes for us to look into this topic, you mentioned you were trying to track down a podcast by a David Walker.
Right, yeah, I had the name slightly off initially.
Yeah, but digging into the catalog, the analytics, and the actual history of this case, all the roads point unequivocally to the highly acclaimed Tony Walker and his classic Ghost Stories podcast.
Which was a brilliant detour, honestly, because Tony Walker's work aligns perfectly with the exact kind of high-level atmospheric storytelling you are looking for.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at a massive catalog of his work today, along with audience analytics from Raphonics, listener feedback, and some really fascinating academic insights into how supernatural folklore actually transmits through modern digital platforms.
So we have this modern audio landscape that is completely obsessed with hyper-produced, jump scare, true horror.
Right, the stuff that's everywhere now.
Exactly. Yet, somehow, a podcast dedicated to simply reading ancient fictional ghost stories manages to rank number 13 in the UK and number 41 in the US for sci-fi and fiction.
Those numbers are just wild when you really think about it.
Right. How does a single guy reading old public domain text capture that kind of massive audience?
Well, if you look at the raw material he uses and the very specific way he delivers it, it creates a completely different psychological contract with the listener.
What do you mean by psychological contract?
So take a look at the modern true horror genre. Shows like Spooked or anything ghost that deal in first-person, supposedly real ghost encounters.
Oh yeah, where people call in to tell their true spooky story.
Exactly. Those shows are built around what academics call supernatural personal experience narratives. And because modern audiences are inherently skeptical, those shows have to manufacture a sense of authenticity.
So they add all the bells and whistles.
Right. They use intricate soundscapes, sudden audio drops, and artificial static in the tape recorder to constantly clue you in that, hey, something scary is happening.
It's highly produced to force a sense of dread.
Because the production is doing the heavy lifting. The story itself might just be, I heard a floorboard creak.
It goes back to that chaotic haunted house ride analogy.
Yeah.
You're just waiting for the next loud noise.
Exactly. But Tony Walker goes in the complete opposite direction. There's no tape hiss, no sudden screams.
So how does he build the tension?
He relies on pure atmospheric performance and the traditional oral storytelling method. He
Okay.
focuses exclusively on the pens of the masters.
We're talking about legendary Gothic authors, right?
Oh, the absolute heavyweights. M.R. James, Edgar Allan Poe, Charles Dickens, H.P. Lovecraft.
Algernon Blackwood, E.F. Benson, W.H. Hodgson.
Yes, all of them. And the delivery of those specific texts is what makes it work so well.
The analytics on this are crazy. With over 2,100 ratings, averaging a staggering 4.9 out of 5 stars, the number one word listeners use to describe his narration is, and this blew my mind, soothing.
Right, soothing. It's professional, it's engaging, and people frequently praise it as being perfect bedtime listening.
They describe the stories as gentle but deeply unsettling. But wait, hold on, let me stop you there.
Sure, what's up?
Because soothing bedtime listening sounds like a complete oxymoron for a horror podcast. If I am falling asleep to something, I am by definition not scared of it.
It sounds contradictory, I know.
Right. If modern true horror is the chaotic haunted house ride with chainsaws, Tony Walker's podcast sounds like sitting in a plush velvet chair by a slowly dying fire. How is that scary?
Okay, so the reason that Velvet Chair is so terrifying is because it allows for creeping dread. When you are on the haunted house ride, your guard is up.
You were bracing for impact.
Exactly. But when you are in the Velvet Chair, listening to a soothing voice, your guard is completely down.
Ah, I see.
Take a story from his catalog like The Death Mask by H.D. Everett. It is about a widower who is haunted by a very small, strange domestic request from his deceased first wife.
Or look at The Thing Invisible by W.H. Hodgson, where a trusted servant is found dead by a dagger in a locked private chapel.
Right. There is no monster jumping out of a closet in those stories.
Not at all.
The terror comes entirely from the atmosphere. It is the shadows in the corner of the room slowly getting longer. The horror is embedded deep in the syntax of the text, in that slow, methodical, psychological buildup.
Which makes perfect sense when you look at a classic like Lost Hearts by M.R. James.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
It's about a scholar living alone in a house in Lincolnshire with his books and a very dark secret. And because Walker's voice is so professional and soothing, it lulls your modern skepticism to sleep.
You weren't braced for a jump scare.
Exactly. So when the unsettling element finally drops, when the ghost actually appears, it sinks its hooks much deeper into your psyche.
What's fascinating here is that the professionalism of Walker's voice carries the weight of these meticulously crafted Gothic sentences. He doesn't need to add artificial static to make it scary.
He just lets the writing breathe.
He trusts the literature, and more importantly, he trusts the listener's intelligence to understand the subtle horrors of the text.
But the narration is really just phase one, right? It is what he does after the story ends that transforms the entire project from a standard audiobook feed into a genuinely engaging educational experience.
Yeah, the analytical component is arguably what retains his massive audience. Most podcasts of this nature just abruptly end when the narrative concludes.
Maybe throwing in an outro with some sponsor reads or something.
Right. But Walker, instead, transitions into insightful literary analysis. He breaks down the background of the author, unpacks the underlying themes of the story, and explains the historical context in which it was originally written.
He operates almost like the coolest English literature professor you never had.
That's a great way to put it. And listeners constantly point to this commentary as the reason they stick around.
It introduces them to lesser-known tales, it expands their literary horizons, and it blends traditional Gothic storytelling with serious scholarly analysis.
And he doesn't just analyze others, he even narrates his own original ghost stories occasionally.
Oh yeah, like the one called The Frost Fair, which takes place on the frozen River Thames in 1814.
Exactly. So he isn't just a reader. He brings a modern authorial perspective to this classic lineup.
He really understands the genre from the inside out.
And writing his own historical fiction proves he deeply understands those mechanics. He knows how to construct the clockwork of a ghost story, which makes his analysis of other authors' work that much more potent.
I have to push back on the analysis part, though.
Okay, lay it on me.
Doesn't dissecting the themes of a ghost story immediately after you hear it completely kill the spooky mood?
Not necessarily, no.
I mean, it sounds exactly like a magician performing an incredible illusion and then immediately turning on the house lights and showing you the trap door. You lose the magic, don't you?
I see what you mean, but you would only lose the magic if the goal was just a cheap thrill. But Gothic horror isn't a magic trick. It's a reflection of societal trauma.
Societal trauma. How so?
Well, understanding why something scares us actually amplifies the psychological impact. Think about the Victorian era, for example.
Okay, the era of M.R. James and Dickens.
Right. It was a time of massive upheaval. You had the Industrial Revolution completely changing the landscape. You had Darwinism challenging traditional religious beliefs.
So people were naturally anxious about everything changing so fast.
Exactly. And you had this deep, pervasive anxiety about the ancient past creeping up to destroy modern progress.
Wow, okay.
When Walker explains these societal anxieties, or when he dives into the specific antiquarian obsessions of an author like M.R. James, who is an actual medieval scholar, by the way, it roots the ghost story in reality.
So the ghost is no longer just a spooky apparition.
It becomes a mirror for the era.
Oh, I see. So instead of turning on the harsh fluorescent lights and ruining the haunted house, the analysis is like giving you a magnifying glass.
Yes. Perfect analogy.
You get to see the exquisite, terrifying detail of the monster's teeth. You are exploring the mechanics of fear itself.
Precisely. And that combination, the visceral performance, followed by the intellectual education, is what creates such a fiercely dedicated audience.
They're not just tuning in to passively consume spooky sounds while they fold laundry.
No, they're there to actively learn and to engage with a rich literary tradition. It elevates the entire deep dive from mere entertainment to cultural exploration.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of pulling this off.
Hmm.
Because producing 446 episodes over 7 years is a monumental task.
It requires serious infrastructure.
And if you've ever tried to build an audience online, you know that Tony Walker isn't just a guy recording into a USB microphone in his closet anymore.
Not at all.
He has had to build a fascinating, multi-layered digital ecosystem to survive.
Because the business of independent digital creation is ruthless. To thrive for 7 years, a creator simply cannot rely on a single platform.
Right, because algorithms change literally overnight.
Exactly. Walker has an active YouTube channel, for instance, which serves as a major discovery engine for the show. But the realities of operating on YouTube as an audio-first creator are incredibly stark.
Yeah, the details and the sources on his YouTube pivot are fascinating. He recently had to completely change the style of the images he uses for his videos.
He was using what he called audiobook-style images.
Yeah, basically just static, atmospheric cover art while the audio played in the background. But he was told that those static images were the exact reason his channel's growth had entirely stagnated.
It is a perfect illustration of the tension between the content and the medium. The YouTube algorithm demands constant visual retention.
It doesn't care about the audio quality.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you are reading the absolute greatest 100-year-old ghost story in the world, beautifully narrated and impeccably researched.
If your thumbnail and on-screen visuals don't constantly stimulate the viewer's eye, the algorithm assumes the video is boring and stops recommending it.
You become effectively invisible on the platform.
So he adapts. But what's really smart is he also builds safety nets outside of the algorithmic gatekeepers.
Like his website.
Yes. He runs a website called gravenheim.com. And this is such a brilliant under-the-radar move. It is a 24/7 ad-free internet radio stream that continuously plays his podcast content.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychology behind a 24/7 stream is entirely different from an on-demand podcast feed.
How so? Because you're just tuning in randomly.
Right. A podcast requires the listener to actively choose an episode, hit play, and manage their queue. An internet radio stream provides ambient companionship.
It's just always there.
It is a permanent destination. You can drop in at 2 in the morning, and someone is already there telling a story in the dark. It builds a completely different kind of loyalty.
It's a never-ending, round-the-clock stream of gothic horror. And he doesn't stop there either.
What else does he have?
He utilizes a Substack where he publishes a fortnightly newsletter featuring short essays on the genre, digging into odd historical discoveries.
That's a great way to keep the educational component active between listens.
And the financial engine that actually makes all of this independence possible is his listener support via Patreon. Operating under the username Barcud, that's spelled B-A-R-C-U-D, listeners pay $5 or $10 a month.
And they get a lot of value for that, from what I understand.
Oh, tons. In exchange, they get hundreds of hours of ad-free stories, early access to new episodes, and monthly member-only content. He's even crossed over into physical, tangible print media.
Wait, really? A physical magazine?
Yeah. He publishes a magazine called Once in a Haunted House.
Wow. He has constructed a remarkably robust, self-sustaining community.
It's impressive.
He is utilizing all of these different avenues, streaming radio, algorithmic video platforms, subscription models, and physical print to support the show.
It ensures that if one platform suddenly changes its rules or goes bankrupt, the oral tradition he is keeping alive doesn't just disappear overnight.
Which is vital for independent creators today.
It is such an amazing juxtaposition when you zoom out and look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
I mean, he is using the absolute most cutting-edge, algorithm-driven digital platforms we have.
Patreon, Substack, YouTube, 24/7 streaming internet radio.
Right. He's using all of that to distribute the oldest, most analog form of entertainment imaginable.
Sitting around telling ghost stories.
Exactly. It is like building a state-of-the-art, high-tech smart home, but the only thing inside the entire house is a single flickering candle.
That's a beautiful way to phrase it. But that contrast is exactly why the project resonates so deeply with people.
Because the core experience hasn't changed.
Exactly. The technology is merely the delivery mechanism. The core product remains the ancient, primal experience of gathering around that candle to hear something frightening. And when you look at the academic analysis we pulled from the sources about how supernatural folklore survives today, it touches on this dynamic beautifully.
What did the thesis say about that?
It argues that modern technology, specifically smartphones and earbuds, actually creates a new kind of folkloric intimacy.
Right, because of the disembodied voice. When you are listening through earbuds, Tony Walker's voice is literally inside your head.
It completely bypasses the physical space between the storyteller and the listener.
There's no barrier at all.
It creates what academics call a liminal space.
A liminal space. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. A liminal space is essentially a threshold, an in-between state where the normal rules of reality are slightly suspended.
Okay, so like a hallway or an empty parking lot at night.
Exactly. And audio creates its own liminal space. When you have a soothing, disembodied voice speaking directly into your ear canal, it pulls you out of your mundane reality.
So you could be physically walking down a crowded, noisy, neon-lit street.
But mentally, in your ears, you are trapped in a decrepit Victorian mansion. The technology doesn't ruin the ghost story. The technology actually facilitates the haunting.
Wow. That is such a fascinating way to look at it. So to wrap up this deep dive for you, you came looking for the ultimate audio haven for classic supernatural fiction, and the Tony Walker Classic Ghost Stories podcast is exactly the destination you were searching for.
It truly is the gold standard for this specific niche.
It succeeds by perfectly marrying high-quality, atmospheric vocal performance with genuine, enriching scholarly insight. It is all supported by a brilliantly constructed, multi-platform digital community that completely defies the cheap jump scares of modern horror.
It is the perfect shortcut to becoming incredibly well-read in classic Gothic literature.
It really is.
It respects your time, it respects your intelligence, and it gives you that thorough knowledge without ever making you feel overwhelmed by information overload. You get the visceral experience of the story, and then you get the intellectual satisfaction of the context.
And as we leave you today, I really want you to think about that lingering idea about liminal spaces.
It's a powerful concept.
The podcast format utilizes the extreme intimacy of earbuds, a disembodied voice speaking directly inside your mind, to completely bypass all of our modern logical skepticism.
It sneaks right past our defenses.
It really makes me wonder, is it possible that our smartphones and digital downloads haven't killed the ancient tradition of folklore at all?
It's a great question.
What if, instead, this technology has actually become the ultimate haunted space of the 21st century? It's something to think about the next time you put your earbuds in. Settle into that velvet chair by the fire and wait for the shadows to creep in.